thank you both for that insight into the water loss issues that are a part of the state, and Caton, the always tiresome, never-ending work that seems to be done from the utility side of things. One question I think that I have that I kind of would like to your insight, just to kind of tie everything together when we're talking about extremes. Is kind of, Caton, from your standpoint, how the winter storm last year, how that affected y'all, the increase in line breaks, and then also, I guess, from the same thing, from the other extreme, when you have droughts, y'all typically see more line breaks during those extremes.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so being in a rural community like that, it is a lot of farm fields. Those fields get saturated with rains. Again, they dry up with droughts. We get a lot of shifting, ground movement out there, line breaks. As far as the winter storm goes, we actually fared really well in terms of leaks. It wasn't the number of leaks that we had out in the system. It was simply just keeping power on and the plants running. All in all, we fared really well during that winter storm. I think as a company, we got out of there with less than $20,000 in damage. So it was pretty impressive for a system as large as ours with as many miles of main that we had. What we came across was more valves on the sides of tanks that froze up and cracked, on your elevateds, things like that. That was majority of the major repairs that we had to do, having to drain our tanks to fix and replace those valves.
Daniel, from the Water Development Board side, have y'all had fielding more calls associated with the water loss data that will soon be coming in and due to y'all from 2021? And
yeah, I mean, we're still collecting those reports, but we are definitely getting the questions from the utilities of, I'm going to see an increase from this last year because of February. We definitely had increased water loss. The question is how to report certain ways. There's certain things within the report that are within, your water loss that you have to put it in the right part on the water loss audit. So we're discussing those with the utilities. And then, the other concern is how is the board going to, dock us for this? and we're not out there to do that to utilities. The best approach is this is a report for the utility to see their improvement with water loss, or at least see and track their water loss from year to year. When reporting to us, the best approach is to provide that in the comments. Hey, we had an increase in water loss for this year because of Uri. So I think it's important to know. But yeah, we have seen increased questions because of it. Yeah.
I'm not seeing. Well, never mind. I do. In the chat, can Caton talk a little bit about their experience with pressure management?
Yeah, so pressure management, like I'm sure a lot of utilities are set up on VFDs. So we're able to manage pressures that way. Simply by dropping the PSI 1 pound at the plant, may equate to a couple pounds down the line at the tops of hills, bottoms of hills, things like that. Another thing that we've looked at is reconfiguring pressure planes and really opening and closing certain pressure zones in our system to get pressures where they need to be and really service that area and kind of balance and mitigate the water that we do have in our system. We have lots of acre footage on one portion of our system of EAA water, and then on the southern portion of our system, we have some purchased water from Cannon Regional and things of that nature. So to kind of balance those assets out a little bit to where we're utilizing all of those groundwater rights and surface water rights as best we can is another way. But as far as pressure mitigation, we're typically relying on what we're leaving the plants at, and that will correct itself downstream as well.
So a follow-up to that, they're asking, do y'all have any like DMAs, district metered areas? Do y'all have any areas of your system that y'all monitor?
No, sir. We have influent meters and effluent meters, what's coming in and going out of each plant, and then we're going off of our customers' residential meters to kind of figure out what usage is out in the field. But that is something that definitely would help, is to have some district metering out in the system to kind of know what portions are using that consumption.
Question for Daniel. Are there plans to expand water loss audit validation program beyond this pilot, or does that still need to be developed and or funded?
It's definitely going to take some money and resources to expand, because it costs money to do just this pilot for 10. Yes, we are looking at the expansion of the validation pilot, of including validation as part of our current water loss technical assistance program. Potentially adding more staff, reaching a lot more systems. Well, we're having those internal discussions at the moment, figuring out what's feasible and what can be done.
Then if a utility has, maybe they want to jump the gun and they want to do their own level 1 validation, you just recommend that they get in contact with you, and you can provide them maybe some potential resources that they can utilize for.
Yeah, definitely reach out to us if you're interested in validation. We know where the resources are at, and we have some resources ourselves, and we can provide that information. There's a lot of third parties out there that are doing it, and potentially if we expand a program, it might be us that are providing that. And so we're familiar as staff with how to provide validation from going through this study. So,
do we have any questions from the audience here? We got a couple. Let Martha get around to you.
Hello, my agency makes a lot of permit decisions based on water loss and other management techniques. I wonder if the state has a document that illustrates what their average percent of loss is across the state, or maybe by size of the utility. Where might we access that information?
Sure. Yeah, we do have we have all the data. But the best data is going to be from 2015 on. We, due to requirements, annual requirements starting in 2013, but the ramp up. So 2015 on is a really good data set of water loss, and we have it in the the format and methodology that follows the AWWA standard, so the industry standard. If you're looking at comparing a group of utilities, or by size, by region, population size, we have that in our on our webpage. Actually, we call it the historical water loss audit data, summary data or summary balance data, and then we also have the raw data files that we can provide to utilities as well, or I'm sorry, anyone. It's public information. So.
And does the water board have a baseline of minimal acceptability as far as water loss is concerned?
I would not put a minimal acceptability for water loss for anyone. Especially if you're going to put a state average, like I hear people in the past have talked about, the state says 15% loss is acceptable, 15% or below is acceptable. My answer to that is the industry has moved away from percentages. So they don't use percentages in tracking water loss. They're using their key performance indicators that you can find in the water loss audit. And then I wouldn't compare every system to another system. I wouldn't set a number, because every system's different. Some systems it's not economically beneficial to achieve a certain level that we might set based on state data. So it's really important that a utility look at their own water loss and improve as best they can to a certain level. You're welcome.
The follow-up to that real quick before I know we got one more in here, is ILI, the leakage, is that your standard now? If you had to pick one?
So the industry has actually, they put a lot of emphasis on infrastructure leakage index in the past, but they're removing that emphasis due to some complexities in, well, the understanding of it. The calculation is based on some errant data. So they're working on, there's a lot of research out there that is putting a correction factor to the ILI. So we don't currently have that information or include that. We just provide the current calculation of ILI. The best performance indicator to use would probably be your real loss per connection per day. If you're going to compare system to system, preferably not every system to every system, but if you're going to track your own water loss, real loss per connection per day, and then of course apparent loss per connection per day, which looks at your customer meter accuracy, your theft, and billing system errors.
I think we had.
Hey, Daniel, you had mentioned just a moment ago in the answer to the previous question about economic viability of water loss activities, including validation. And you also mentioned earlier in the presentation that the recommendation was for all water utilities, if I get this right, if I get it wrong, let me know, that all water utilities undergo a validation every year. Did the report go into any further discussion on if different sizes of utilities, if it's better to do a validation every year for different sizes of utilities? Because all these were under 100,000, and then you had 50,000 to 100,000, 10 to 50, or under 10,000. Right. Is it better to do annual validations for some sizes rather than others?
I don't recall that being in the study. There have been discussions about, would it be beneficial for all to have to do it annually? There are, cost factors. It's not free to do a validation for a utility if they were to go through a third party, or even if the state were to do it, we would have to have the money to do it for all. So no, I haven't seen any consideration on that within the report itself.
Thanks.
Keep us on time. If we have any more further questions, just put them in the chat, and I'll get with Keaton and Daniel. And if you're here in the room, just